Jenny Brown. Welcome to this week's edition of MFB News. Hope everybody's fine and dandy, that you had a glorious weekend out in the sunshine. I reckon about 85% of all grown-ups were out doing the garden this weekend, if my local garden centre was anything to judge by when I went there, because I was also doing my garden. Now, in terms of what we've got for you this week, we're going to do our usual roundup in terms of what's been happening with swap rate prices, lender pricing changes, lender criteria changes. Got some interesting ones in there to go through with you this week. And then we're going to be talking about whether we are now coming to the end of leaseholds, based on a white paper which was published in the last week or so, to update you on where we are with that. Okay, so first up, swap rates. Now, it is Tuesday evening. I'm cheating slightly, not doing this Wednesday morning for a change. So I don't have the very, very latest swap rate information, but I did see in the news earlier on that the American stock markets have reacted really badly to all this kind of tariff stuff that's going on with Donald Trump. And I did just think, oh God, what's this going to do to swap rates? However, as of 10:45 on Monday evening, and at this point the news had kind of come out, things had moved up slightly but not terribly, so this might move by the time this video reaches you. But as of 11:45 on Monday evening, 2-year swaps, just a fraction over 4%. 1 month ago they were just under 4%, and 1 year ago they were at around 4.5%. So month on month, slightly less attractive position. Year on year, definitely we're quids in. 5-year swaps, very similar story. So as of last night, they were just under 3.4. 1 month ago, they were sitting at just over 3.8. So we have seen things go up by sort of circa 0.1-ish%. Year on year, we're slightly behind the curve now. So 1 year ago, they were at 3.85. So 5-year swap rates currently slightly more expensive than they were 1 year ago. I think what I'm deducing from the kind of pattern that we're seeing with swap rates at the moment is just that actually things are kind of sitting still. Any kind of news knocks things a little bit, hopefully not too much. But actually there's no real kind of news coming that's really driving swap rates down. So for those of you who are biding your time waiting for rates to come down further, I can't see anything on the horizon that's going to naturally make a big step change to fixed rate pricing. But hopefully things will kind of settle once Donald Trump kind of winds his neck in, and things settle a little bit there, and hopefully we might then see the markets calm down. We might see some small reductions, but obviously where Donald Trump's concerned, anything's possible. Now, despite what I've just said, there have been some lender pricing changes, and actually some of them, just looking at them here, quite significant. So the big one is that Quantum mortgages have dropped their rates down by up to 0.4%. Now, Quantum is not a name you would naturally come across. Very, very specialist lender. They've got a couple of really nice strings to their bow, which I'll go into in just a second. But for your kind of average, very sort of vanilla type landlord, you simply wouldn't come across them. But the two things that Quantum do, so first of all, specialist lenders, they're great at limited companies, all those kinds of things that for those of you who watch this video know what that actually means. But the two things they've got in their kind of toolkit, as it were, that seem to sort of generate them some real wins is, first of all, they're not stress testing the background portfolio. Second, so for those of you who've gone to do a remortgage and the lenders are actually the background portfolio isn't meeting our rental calculation, Quantum can take a look at that for you. Secondly, particularly if you're doing a like-for-like remortgage, the rental calculation they use is incredibly generous. This would work for those people who, because of the pricing that Quantum offer, you really wouldn't be able to you'd be with a lender who wasn't offering a product transfer, essentially. So you kind of would be better off going and paying Quantum rates than not doing anything. For those of you who would find that you could only do a product transfer, you'd be very pushed to sort of justify taking a Quantum rate over a PT rate. The other thing that they do, and this is really interesting, is they don't tend to look at the lease. So this works particularly well for those people who are letting their properties to, for example, a Serco type provider, where you may have sort of vulnerable tenants in place, so sheltered accommodation, that kind of thing. So actually they do have some really nice things in the background, but there's no escaping the fact they're certainly not a kind of, cheap lender, as it were. Now, we have seen Barclays bring rates down by up to 0.5%. I don't really talk about Barclays. If I'm honest with you, I don't take them seriously as lender in the buy-to-let space. Sorry, Barclays, if you're watching this, but I don't. They are very good at lending to individuals who have one buy-to-let property and a really good day job income, as it were, where the rental calculation isn't stacking up. So top slicing essentially. So Barclays are very, very good at that. Their pricing is kind of fine, but nothing to write home about. Their kind of requirements are beyond the thing that I've just mentioned just now with regards to the rental cap. They're actually very restrictive. They're not particularly landlord friendly. So we don't tend to use Barclays a lot, but actually there is still a place for them in the market. If you're a person who's earning good income from a day job, you've got one buy-to-let, particularly in sort of like the southeast where the yields are less fantastic, should we say, than the rest of the country, Barclays could be a good home for you. Now, we've also seen Santander, let's call it some jiggling around with their pricing. So some rates have come down, but up to 0.08%, but other rates have gone up by 0.1. So in the round, actually, probably not so great, but good to see Santander looking at their pricing and making adjustments where they possibly can. We've seen Bank of Ireland bring rates down by up to 2.2%. Again, Bank of Ireland, they're not a lender that I say really is in the buy-to-let market in a big way. Very, very vanilla lender. Another lender who is great at top slicing. So again, thinking about what we just said about Barclays, you don't have much exposure to buy-to-let. You maybe just got one or two, good day job, not a lot of kind of cost. You've got lots of surplus income. Your rental calculation isn't working out, but you can clearly afford the mortgage because you've got oodles of disposable income. These guys could be a good option for you. And then finally, in terms of pricing changes, we have seen LendInvest bring down some of their rates, but up to 0.25%. So look, do you know what, guys, in terms of changes, given that actually swap rates are kind of edging up a little bit rather than downwards, I'm actually really just very pleased to be able to come to you and talk about rate reductions rather than rate increases. Let's hope it's the same for next week. Criteria changes. I love criteria change. So the first one that I want to talk to you about is with the mortgage lender, as we affectionately refer to them as TML, because the mortgage lender is just too much to say. So TML, as I mentioned last week, have gone into 80% loan to value lending, which is fantastic. And I think as much as it's great they've gone into 80% lending, this is a fairly underserved part of the market. So it's great to have another player in there. More competition means less pricing gets driven down, which is fantastic. But actually, really for me, the more important thing is the kind of sentiment this tells us about where they're expecting house prices to go. If they were thinking house prices were going to tank by 10% over the next 12 months, they certainly wouldn't be going into higher loan to value lending. So this is really reassuring in terms of, where they're expecting house prices to go. But the other thing that they've done, which is a real win, is they've started allowing first-time landlords to have mortgages on HMOs and multi-unit blocks. So for those of you who aren't so seasoned in this, just to let you know that if you are a first-time landlord and you're thinking about buying an HMO or multi-unit, you will find that a lot of the lenders who play in that space are not going to be prepared to give you a mortgage. There are a handful, a very small handful that would, but the majority of lenders wouldn't. Why is this? Well, actually, for those of you who have HMOs, you will be very quick to point out that actually they're quite high maintenance. There's a lot more tenant turnover. You get kind of more involved in some of the kind of day-to-day stuff that comes on with kind of essentially house sharing. There's lots more rules that sit around HMOs in terms of things like fire alarms, fire doors, room sizes, licensing, all this kind of stuff. So they're just more complex. So a lot of lenders take the view that actually, if you want to do HMOs, that's fine, but go and cut your teeth on a straightforward investment first. Check being a landlord is actually for you, then come back when you've got at least 6 months experience under your belt. So that's the kind of thought process there. But actually, like I say, if you are a first-time landlord and you're thinking about going into HMOs, or less sort of typical would be multi-unit blocks as well, so a single legal title with more than one self-contained unit on it, then actually TML could be a good option for you. So that's TML's changes, but more interestingly, Fleet Mortgages have made some changes to their criteria. So the first thing they've done is they've announced that they're now going to consider up to £500 worth of CCJs in the background as long as they're satisfied, or £250 worth of CCJs if they are unsatisfied. Now, I think we do eventually need to do a bit of a session on credit reports and what is and isn't acceptable for lenders. But actually, Fleet are, in the space in which they operate, a very competitively priced lender. I mentioned last week they're owned by Starling Banks. They have savers money, which they're lending back out, which means their cost of funds are cheaper than those who rely on the capital markets. Therefore, fleets rates are very good. They're good at lending to people with larger portfolios, HMOs, multi-units, limited companies, that kind of stuff. So the fact they're now saying that actually we can consider, I mean, comparatively small CCJs to be fair, but CCJs nonetheless is really fantastic. If you do have credit blips on your report, by the way, I wouldn't immediately rule yourself out of being able to get a mortgage. It's quite amazing when you kind of know who to speak to, how much you can actually have on a file and be able to obtain a mortgage. So if you are someone who's got a few misdemeanors, let's say, on your credit file and you're struggling to find a home, do give us a call. Now, the other thing they've done is they have reduced their minimum floor area requirement for, well, they say studio flats, but also flats as well, down from 35 square metres to 30 square metres. Now, this is an interesting one. So, I mean, you'd be very hard pushed to find a one-bedroom flat that was 30 square metres. This would tend to be a studio. Most lenders have a requirement of between 30 and 35 square metres. Excuse me, there are very few lenders who have no minimum requirement on floor size, looking at real micro studios here. There are a couple of lenders that can do them, but the fact that Fleet have kind of dropped their size down by 5 square metres as a percentage of that sort of requirement is very, very good. So all in all, I think actually great to see that some rates have come down, and also really good that the lenders are obviously really sort of looking at their lending criteria and really seeing how they can kind of support the landlord community even better with their lending propositions. Okay, now the government published their Common Hold white paper on the 3rd of March, which Housing Minister Matthew Pennycock heralded in his press release as the end for the feudal leasehold system, so no more leasehold flats. So essentially the press release is saying that this will involve the introduction of a comprehensive new legal framework for common hold by the end of this parliament, so by 2029, after which new leasehold flats will be banned. This will make common hold the default tenure within 4 years. Now, bringing leasehold to an end isn't a simple task, and common hold is certainly not an easy fix. And this is why the Common Hold white paper concentrates on making it compulsory for new developments. And they're still working on an easier way to convert existing leaseholds to common hold. Now, this is important because it's going to be important to 5 million leaseholders in England, essentially, 1.8 million of which are landlords. So 1.8 million private landlords are leaseholders in the UK. So it's going to impact absolutely loads of us. So let's answer the things that we can answer at this very early stage. So first of all, what is common hold? So essentially, we know that when you buy a leasehold property, essentially you are buying the right to occupy the air inside the bricks or of the space for a period of time. And that period of time will essentially run out, and you have to then pay to have the lease extended. Unlike leaseholds, common holds are a form of freehold property ownership. Now, this was introduced by the Blair government in the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act in 2002, which I'm sure most of you are far too young to remember. Common hold enables flats in a building or development to be owned on a freehold basis. The owner of a common hold flat is the unit holder owning the freehold of their home. The unit holder is also a member of common hold or residents association, which owns and manages the common parts of the property for all of the unit holders. Now, in my very simple mind, I see this has essentially been a bit like share of freehold. So when you have a share of freehold, all of the leaseholders also own a share of the freehold, and you are essentially responsible for ensuring the maintenance and upkeep of that property. So with common hold, there is no lease, and the Common Hold Association decides how to manage the property. It's an alternative way of owning a flat, which avoids the shortcomings of leasehold ownership. For larger blocks, the unit holders wouldn't carry out the day-to-day management themselves, but would instead appoint an agent to manage it for them. However, it would be the unit holders rather than an external freeholder, who would control the appointment and management of those agents. So essentially, it's going to be giving a lot more power back to the owners of each flat. It means that you get control of the actual building, and it also means that the flat is going to be yours forever. It's not going to have a lease term that runs out and mean you're going to have to spend a bunch of money getting it extended. We will keep you posted as this moves on, but like I say, this is going to impact 1.8 million landlords, so it's something that's going to be of interest to many of you. It's never dull, is it? So look, that's everything for this week. Hopefully that was nice and concise for you and informative at the same time. If you have any questions, as always, we'd love to hear from you. 0345 345 6788. Look at that, it is 6 o'clock in the evening, and there is still light in the sky, so summer is on its way. We are nearly there. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you same time again next week.